Bama just had a quarterback battle. You guys know that. And it appears that Ty Simpson is the guy that emerged as the starting quarterback. You knew that anyway, right? Well, his dad's a great coach. We're going to talk about his comments about his son's quarterback battle. We're going to talk a little bit of loyalty in college football hanging here in Knoxville. There's a lot of upset people at a guy named Nico. So we'll talk about that. Rule changes and more. The mailbag's open today. Interpret that how you want. All right, let's get this show started. Welcome to Cover Crimson, covercrimson.com. Sorry, Clint. There he is, Clint Lamb. I'm Mick Gillispie. Good to see you guys today. Brought to you by our friends at Pearl River Resort over in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Sorry, man. I didn't mean to change the direction of this program.
No, I think you're the captain of this ship, and you're steering it in the right direction. And if we hit an iceberg and we go down, we'll go down with the ship.
Hey, I saw that in a movie.
Did you?
Mm-hmm. I saw an Instagram clip the other day of a guy that survived telling the story of the Titanic. Like,
was it Jack?
I don't know. It was like a real person. No, it was like a real British guy. He's like, oh, no, I was on the front. I was on the bow, and I don't know how I didn't hit the propeller on the way down. You know, I was just like, oh my God.
I bet that guy's got some crazy stories.
Man, I bet he's got some nightmares about that, man.
Yeah, that's one of my I wouldn't say it's like my biggest fears, but a lot of reasons you don't want to go down to the ocean.
No, man. No. Brett used to ask me all the time whether I wanted to get eaten by a shark or a bear. I should say, don't ever ask me that, man.
I would probably say bear because at least I would be in I feel like I would be in a better defensive position, maybe. Like being on land, like I'm dying anyways, but I feel like I could fight back better against a bear. When you're in the water, man, you're in that shark's environment. You're toast. You're done.
Yeah, I think you're going to die either way. So
you're 100%. Yeah, you're done. It's just a matter of, do I want to go down swinging less?
And then he knew it bothered me, so he just kept asking me. Well, let me ask you about some football. All right. Jason Simpson is the dad and coach of Ty Simpson, former 5-star and presumably Alabama starting quarterback. He spoke about the quarterback battle.
Yeah, and it's a great piece over at Bama Online. Charlie Potter put it together, and just a lot of great information. I would highly recommend everybody go check that out, because I'm sure I know we're not gonna touch on all of it. I just thought there was a couple of things that was, pretty cool. Just as far as, he was asked about what Ryan Grubb had said about him being the starter if there was a game tomorrow. I loved his response. He pretty much said, what'd they say? If we play tomorrow, all right, well, we're not playing tomorrow. So, you got to keep going to work every day, keep getting better. Being considered the starter if there was a game tomorrow is not the same thing as being considered the starter if it was week 1 and it was Florida State. So the job's not finished. But, he talked about Ty putting stuff up on the whiteboard for his coaching staff and diagnosing plays and explaining the nuance behind it, the meaning behind a lot of it. A lot of guys can get up there and they can talk about the X's and O's, but understanding why you're doing what you're doing and, kind of what the defense's goal is going to be, how you're going to try to stop that, all those different things, getting into the layers of it, which is very coach-esque. Ty's got that side of it, which isn't surprising. He mentioned something about the accuracy and just how, I think Ty sent him some grades that they had from practice, and he was at like 97%. It's really? Routes on air. So it's not like it's overly difficult, but I mean, at the same time, 97% is good. The communication with his teammates on the field and off the field, like he said that he uses his son's laptop to watch film, and it's like the laptop never stops beeping because he's in constant communication with his teammates, and they're saying, "Hey, did you see this on this route?" It was a very cool article. But the main thing that I wanted to pull up, and I'll go ahead and do it, was this quote, because this is something that I think that we have talked about a lot when it comes to Ty Simpson and things that have kind of held him back in the past. and why I think he's ready to take the next step. So he says, for those that are listening on the podcast, I think Ty would be the first one to tell you in 2023 when they were going through that, if he made a mistake, he let it magnify. If the other quarterbacks made a throw, then it's kind of like you're now playing golf, right? I'm trying to outdrive you and hit it even farther. And I think that'd probably be the first thing he would tell you is that he should have just taken it one play at a time, should have just concentrated on what he was doing well instead of just the overall big picture of everything. You can't control those things or the success or failures that others are having. Mick, I love that because this is something that I've constantly heard when it comes to Ty Simpson and the steps that he's taken as far as his development. He understands the offense. He's got a very good quality 5-star skill set that you can build some things around. But the main thing that was holding him back was adjusting to the level of competition. That was something very early that he dealt with. But I think more so when Nick Saban, and I've said this before, when Nick Saban was talking about the cake in the oven and being ready, it was things like this. And, losers focus on winners, winners focus on winning, right? And I think right now, Ty has the mentality of he's focusing on winning. He's not focusing on what Keelan's doing. He's not focusing on what Mac's doing. When you watch Austin Mack right now, I would probably venture to guess that if anybody's focused on someone else, it's probably him because he's the one that's seemingly pressing a little bit. Ty has been that guy in the past. He's learned from it. He's got better from it. I would fully expect Mac to do the same thing. But just reading this quote in that article from Bama Online, which I would once again highly suggest everybody go over there and read it, it made me very encouraged about not only where Ty Simpson is at, but where this Alabama offense is at right now too.
That's a good sign. I've heard similar things too, that he just looks the part and he's making plays and he's commanding the offense and the teams behind him, right? And so all of those things kind of lead us to an easy decision, at least early. But see, I don't think that it's going to be like last year where Milroe got the job and he was just going to have it, even when he was terrible at the end of the year. I think that if they feel like he's not improving, if he's not making plays in their offense, and Austin Mack is, I think they'd move on that.
I would agree with that. I don't think that's an out of pocket thing to say at all. I think especially the further along you get, whether it's Austin Mack or it's Keelan Russell, the further they get into this, the more practice reps, the more opportunities. Like they're both going to be getting better too. So, right. I think you got a really big test, a big hurdle in week 1. I think right now it's pretty easy that to say that Ty Simpson gives you probably the best chance to win that game because, I think right now with the way Keelan Russell and Austin Mack are performing, it's like you get the ceiling and you get the flashes, but I think right now they're probably doing some, they're doing more things that can get you beat than Ty Simpson. But that doesn't necessarily mean that will be the case all season. But, and this is the next point that I wanted to talk about, and we'll just kind of go ahead and kind of transition to this because I think it's, the whole Nico conversation has created a lot of animosity from a lot of college football fans. Like Tennessee is unified with, most people, most college football fans as far as their dislike for whether it be Nico, maybe it's his dad, his representation. Nico and his, his entourage is not very popular right now.
Yeah.
And it's because of it feels like a lack of loyalty because, it kind of is. But there's a flip side of that because like when you look at Ty Simpson, I feel, and I realized I came to this realization through your video with Jake that y'all did yesterday. Thought it was fantastic. I know cutting out was frustrating, but just I thought he gave some great takes on Alabama's quarterback battle on Nico. But one of the things that kind of triggered that in my mind was, him talking about Ty has been loyal. And I'm like, man, that is such an excellent point. Yeah. Like a lot of people right now, they're pulling for Keelan Russell, they're pulling for Keon Keeley because he has been loyal as well. He's a former 5-star top 10 recruit. Everybody wants him to be that player, but he's also a guy who has stuck through a lot of this adversity. And if you can get that guy to a point where he can be rewarded, you will now have that calling card for the rest of your team when you find yourself in similar situations moving forward. I think everybody to an extent understands that with Ty, but for whatever reason, I guess because there's just one starting quarterback and they have their questions, I feel like the loyalty to Ty isn't in the same place as maybe the loyalty is to Keon Keeley, which I find interesting because, everybody can clearly see what the other side of it, the lack of loyalty, can look like when it's all about the money. It's never been about the money. It's never been about, hey, you need to hand me a starting job in year 1 or year 2 or even year 3. This is a guy who's been loyal to Alabama. He's had other opportunities, I can promise you. And, if he ends up being Alabama's starter and does well, I think that will not only benefit Alabama in the immediate, but also the future as well.
I hope so. I hope you're right. I mean, just being around and talking to people about the Nico situation, and I've read some people, we both like Shannon Terry. I read where he said, don't blame Nico, it's the system. I mean, I get that, but it's not. It's the guy apparently had trouble showing up to do the NIL stuff in the first place. It's a lack of character, and it starts from whoever his representation is. I guess if it's his parents or whatever, when you give somebody your word, you stick by it. That's the bottom line. If he's worried about wanting to get paid for an extra game if they go into the playoffs, then you don't want that guy on your team anyway. You should be worried and focused on winning championships and being a good teammate, especially when you're already paid $2 million. It's not like you're not getting paid. But he's made such a great example of just how there is such a lack of loyalty. But I also agree with Shannon that the system needs to be fixed. There has to be some kind of guardrails when it comes to this stuff. I mean, no doubt about it. I mean, like it's crazy that there aren't any to me.
And I think we're slowly getting there, but I mean, and I understand where Shannon's coming from. Like, I think we can all agree, we can all acknowledge where this problem started. Mm-hmm. It started with the NCAA not foreseeing whenever all of the rest of us could. There were still people pushing back against athletes getting paid and stuff, but for anybody that understood how all of this works, I think we all realize that at some point this stuff is going to change. And the lack of being proactive, they have been reactive this entire time. They continue to be reactive to this day, and it's what's going to end up causing their downfall, which really in a lot of ways has already happened, but just that downfall being official. But it's like, with Nico's situation, I mean, I actually heard yesterday to back up, and it's the first thing I thought of was that you've been telling me this for forever, by the way. This was, I mean, man, was this a year ago? I mean,
I've started hearing this stuff like a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, like a little bit. Yeah. And then last year I heard really like people that are good Tennessee boosters that just want to help the program out, trying to pay for these guys. And all they got to do is show up or do a commercial or whatever. And he wouldn't show up to any of it. They were having problems. It was kind of like whispers, but like, man, this guy, it was before he even played a game.
Well, and that first of all, that's crazy. That's absolutely mind-boggling to me, but I heard something similar yesterday on that SEC podcast. Michael Bratton, he had somebody on, and I wish I knew who it was. I didn't catch the name, but it was just a little clip he posted on Twitter, and it was pretty much exactly what you're saying. He would show up to a lot of these things, and he would be asked to do something, and he would call his dad, allegedly, and his dad would shoo everybody out and say he doesn't have to do any of that stuff, and then he would leave. And it's like that. We're going to get off the rails a little bit here, but I think I understand how those types of family dynamics work. You know, that the father kind of runs the show. I understand that, but I feel like that you also are setting your kid up where he's constantly turning to somebody else to solve his problems. Yeah, like he's never. When does he become his own man and step up and handle his own, his own shit? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the part that's frustrating to me is like, I think I'm not surprised that he had the on the field adversity that he had, knowing that that's the kind of stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And it's just, it's frustrating because I'm sure that Nick loves his son. I'm sure, I don't question that whatsoever. I do think that he's gone about this terribly. I think his ego has completely gotten in the way, continues to be in the way. And you would have thought this situation would have been humbling for him. It has not. Like, from everything that I know, the fact that he's still trying to manipulate how much they're getting paid by UCLA, if that ends up happening, and the reasoning, they're trying to throw shade back at Tennessee and say it was the offense. And it's like, you're just, I mean, if it was, I don't know, the whole thing's been frustrating. But on the flip side, Ty Simpson is the exact counter argument to this. It's loyalty. It's not him being focused on the money. It's him continuing to be focused on his teammates, on his own development, him getting better. And I mean, if you had Ty Simpson climbing next year and becoming one of those guys, one of the faces of college football, and you had Nico falling by the wayside, which I think is very possible if he ends up going to UCLA, because he's got 4 months to learn an offense when he hadn't been asked to make full field reads. He's not going to have the talent around him. He's got this negative, people view him very negatively right now. That could affect his psyche. Like, I could completely see him in a year from now being back in the transfer portal.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about moving on to the NFL. Like, him having to go even smaller than UCLA, because, if you had that where they're moving in two opposite directions, I think that would be amazing for college football. I want Nico to do well, despite the fact that he's got all these shortcomings with his dad. But, because he seems like a good kid. He's just, I think, being led astray. But this would be a great representation for, going about it the right way and how you can be rewarded for that, and then not going about it the right way and how that can cause your downfall.
I think all Alabama fans would love to see it work out that way.
And if Tennessee ends up being terrible in the process too, then that's only a bonus for Bama fans. Even though I will say it would be, Bama fans are going to pull against Tennessee, and I'm not telling you to do otherwise. But if they did well without Nico, it kind of would be a reminder to the players, like, you think you're the most important aspect of this, like on an individual level. Yeah. And you're really not, because they're
revolve around you.
Yeah.
Pal.
So that, if they fall apart, great. If they don't, they end up being good anyways. It's like, that will also be at least good for college football. So,
Well, we'll see what happens, but Ty Simpson's definitely been loyal. Guys, I want to tell you, too, that we appreciate the loyalty that we've gotten from some of our partners, and that includes mybookie.ag. I mean, they help put this show on every day. We appreciate them so much. And right now, we throw this up there. You don't want to make the trip to a place like Pearl River. It's a long way to go. You would say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to stay home. You can stay home right here. 50% off deposit bonus up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip when using our code Crimson at mybookie.ag. Take advantage of it. You got the Masters. Everybody was doing those Masters polls. You got NASCAR. You got NBA coming up. The playoffs aren't too far away. Hockey.
NFL draft.
Oh, NFL draft. Oh, look at you, man.
Get some prop bets going on there.
Yeah, Milroe in the first round.
Ooh, wonder what that's going to look. How high should Shedeur go?
To the Steelers.
Yeah. It's, there's I will be. That's one thing I do every year. My brother gets with me, and we always come up with a couple of draft prop bets for him to do. So, I'm sure we'll be getting on over to mybookie.ag to do some of that ourselves for sure.
All right, let's talk about the new rule on injuries. Explain it to us, because we know that the faking of the injury had become just a pandemic around football.
So the way that it's going to work is, if your training staff, your medical staff, does not get on the field to help with an injury prior to the referee spotting the ball, then you will lose a timeout for having your medical staff go out there and address an injury. And if you do not have a timeout, then it is a 5-yard delay of game penalty. This is really fascinating to me. I understand what they're doing. I feel like it's going to work out very poorly in a game for somebody.
Yeah.
And we're going to realize the downsides to this. And I don't know if that's defensively, but it's almost like, okay, you can stop the clock, at the end of a game or whatever, where you might be doing this, it's only going to cost you 5 yards. And so for some, defense or whatever, I mean, it'll still be abused. It will be beneficial. The abuse will benefit the offense, or whatever. to an extent, but it's just I don't know how much this is going to deter this, and I kind of wanted to know your thoughts on it too.
I mean, they got to do something. I mean, it's a start. At least they're addressing it. We'll see how it's manipulated, but I'm glad. Nick Saban was always against that fake injury stuff. And then when KALEN DeBoer's staff definitely faked some injuries, in my opinion, so it was
at least
weird.
one. Like, there was one that they got caught.
It's like, get down.
No one ever gets caught, and they got caught.
But anyway, I don't know. Like they need to stop it, right? And it's just weird how these coaches get around and they just want to skirt the rules all the time. They want to figure out how they can get around with just little edges, but it really all it does is just slow the game down. So when they're doing that, and this should speed it back up, because you start giving up too many 5-yard penalties and lose your timeouts. I mean, it's going to hurt.
Question: Are medical staffs going to become pit crews, where it's like they're kind of waiting on the sidelines to just take off onto the field? Like, is that going to be? And here's something that's like, who's to say you don't have somebody that's really not medical staff, but you label them as medical staff, and their whole entire job is not to address the players or anything, but you're that guy that runs out on the field immediately. Like, you're ready to go at all times to get out there. Is the rule where, hey, who's ever out on the field by the time the ball gets spotted, that's who has to help the player? Or is it, hey, we got one person that gets out there really quick, and then you add a couple of more people later? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So you might have a designated person. What I'm saying is I've already come up with about 12 ways that you can completely skirt this rule. And so that's why I don't know how much it will affect things, or deter it, prevent it, whatever you want to call it. But it's going to be interesting, man. Anytime they do a rule like this, I feel like there's going to be some unintended consequences, and I just don't know how much is actually going to address the problem. But we'll see. And I do agree with you. At least they're trying to do something. Yeah,
I love that. Talking about doing something, people are going, okay, how do I talk to Clint? I want to know what Clint's opinions on certain topics are. Well, I'm going to tell you right there. CoverCrimson.com, $25 off the annual subscription to be on the message board, covering the portal. It's a lot of action. I was thinking about this yesterday. I heard that, I don't know how accurate this is, but there could be some offers already going out to players, which is crazy.
You talking about from Bama side? That's interesting.
I'm sure that's how it goes these days, right? I mean, as soon as it opens, we'll see. I mean, I don't know how credible the sources are. I just say that somebody told me that, and I was like, wow, but that's how it is. I mean, there's like meetings where, where handlers are having, shopping players. It could be happening in Tuscaloosa with some of the Bama's players. Kirby talked about it. It's just, there's no rule on not doing it that way. So,
well, it's interesting that you bring up the transfer portal, because that is what the mailbag question is actually going to be on. So I'll go ahead and we'll go ahead and kind of dive into that.
I've got ESPN.
That's right. I said you're the captain, and you always steer us in the right direction. So, so once again, same. By the way, one person is just completely taking advantage of the mailbag, which is like, we don't have a set mailbag episode or something. It's like, if you got a question, tell us. We'll try to address it on the show. One person has figured out if you got a question, all you got to do is just reach out to me, DM, whatever, and you can get it asked. They've asked all 3 questions have come from the same person, and they've chose to remain anonymous every time. But their question is, why isn't Alabama making moves in the transfer portal? Not saying they've got to sign someone necessarily, but they haven't even been connected to anybody, and there doesn't seem to be any visits lined up. Should we be concerned? I mean, obviously the transfer portal opened up on Wednesday. Alabama so far has not had anybody enter at the time of this recorded video. I'll probably say that, and by the time we get it out in like an hour, 3 players will have entered or something. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But I mean, Mick, is that something from your standpoint? Like, are you concerned about the speed in which this coaching staff is moving on this? Or no. Okay, go ahead.
No, I think they've done a great job on this. The only complaints I've really had, and I want to start with that, is because there's really not a lot to complain about. Just the discipline that they didn't have last year from game to game. Ryan Grubb's going to address a lot of that. He's the guy that you can just tell when he's up there that he's not going to tolerate some of the stuff that went on last year. I don't see them shooting baskets on 4th down plays anymore, but with that said, I mean, I do want the environment to match what will make, great players want to come and play for Alabama. Now on this front, they did an excellent job in the portal last year. I mean, look at their best players. They're all transfers, or a lot of them are. So I look for more of that. I'm sure they're out there going, hey, you got to have a tight end. If you got all these guys hurt at tight end, go get a tight end. What are we doing at punter, right? And you can transfer, but if you don't play, we don't know what you can do. So there's one. But I'd watch tight end and offensive line and, maybe an interior defensive lineman. And I mean, what was the guy's name? Payne that transferred to Michigan. I told you when that happened, it was going to be bad.
Yeah, I think Jeremiah Beeman's emergence has alleviated that. Now, obviously, if you still had Payne, you'd feel really good about the interior defensive line. I mean, because you would have like 5 true interior defensive linemen, plus you would have Kelby Collins' ability to play on the inside. And you would say, okay, we can withstand, even if we have an injury or two, like it won't be detrimental. And I think in a lot of these positions, you feel that way. Defensive line, I think you feel better about where they would be if they sustain like an injury to one of their guys in the rotation, their main guys in the rotation. But, it's like really, I mean, even like one injury right now, you really start getting concerned. And then if you have 2, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So that's why, a defensive lineman could be addressed. I want to bring up, though, a couple of things. Number one, I think the coaching staff has earned our trust with this. And I've brought this up before, but I want to reiterate it. All the way around, I want you to think about the high-profile people that Alabama has brought in. Keelan Russell, Dijon Lee, Michael Carroll, Ivan Taylor, Justin Hill, Jackson Lloyd. All of those guys, to an extent, we're hearing good things about all of them. It's early. It's only been 15 spring practices, but we feel like Dijon Lee's going to be a contributor. We feel like Ivan Taylor's going to be a contributor. We feel like Jackson Lloyd is a much further along, and he's, he can maybe end up potentially helping there at tackle as a depth option. Keelan Russell has kind of been as advertised. He's young. He's still learning and growing, but high upside. And so from a 5-star top 100 type of standpoint, guys seem to be living up to the hype. And then you start focusing on, because it's the same way last year. Ryan Williams, certainly. Zabian Brown. Jalen Mbakwe was a big contributor at corner last year. It's kind of cornerback 3-4. Zay Mincy ended up getting a start. So, I mean, a lot of their highly ranked guys, they ended up, what I would say, panning out, contributing, living up to the hype, whatever you want to call it. Then start talking about maybe some of those lower rated guys. This year, you're talking about like Latsir Brooks. We're hearing good things about Abdul Sanders, 3-star, Mal Waldrop, 3-star offensive lineman who has actually ended up doing pretty good last year. Will Sanders, Red Morgan ended up far exceeding a guy who was ranked outside the top 250. He ended up being a first-year contributor. Drake Kirkpatrick Jr., 3-star, was ranked outside the top 600. He's emerging as a strong depth option at Husky. Quentin Reese, what about his development? 3-star, ranked outside the top 800, getting development there. And then look at the transfer portal. Last year, a lot of very high-profile guys. Damani Jackson was already committed before DeBoer got here. LT Overton was already committed. But they ended up doing exactly what we expected them to do. LT Overton was their best defensive lineman. Damani Jackson was one of their best secondary players. Look at some of the other guys, Jimmer Bernard, Parker Brailsford, who questioned Josh Cuevas when he was added. Deshaun Jones, who thought, hey, I mean, who's this guy? 3-star player out of the transfer portal. Was barely ranked in the top 50 cornerbacks. Look at Geno Vandermark when they added him. Who's this guy from Michigan State who's played a little bit, but not a ton, ended up being a valuable piece, filled exactly what they wanted him to do. Cam Howard is a guy that we've heard good things about to help fill out the depth last year, but was a very young player, only a redshirt sophomore, is ended up being a guy who has kind of stepped up and really come on pretty strong in the spring. You look at like some of the guys that they've added, Keon Sabb was another one there who is a high profile guy, gets added. ends up being a starter and an impact player before he got hurt. But you look at like Cam Dewberry, he looks like he's probably going to end up being a starter. Isaiah Horton getting a lot of recognition. Nakai Hill-Green coming on strong. My point in all of this is kind of what they've targeted and these guys they've kind of gotten it out of them. Like Draylon Washington wasn't brought in to be a headline running back, and he's not living up to that hype. He was brought in to add to the room as far as experience. He adds a little bit of a different element, and he was expected to be a depth rotational piece. That's exactly where he's trending towards being. Like, it's like all these guys, they were what they were added to do, they've done. So this staff has done a phenomenal job of identifying the talent, getting the talent on campus, and developing the talent. So whoever they choose to go get in the transfer portal, their goal right now is not to go add headliners. There's no rush on the guys that they're going to be targeting, because it's going to be a depth tight end. It's going to be a depth offensive lineman. It's going to be a depth defensive lineman. And I have mentioned this kind of on the message board, and I want to reiterate it here. I think this coaching staff is also being strategic. There's a game being played, and in a 20-day portal window, like back in the winter, you can't afford to sit on your hands for 20 days waiting on the window to close before you start making moves, because everybody will be gone. A lot of them will be, but you can wait 10 days and you can let all the guys who are on your roster, make sure none of them leave. And then once they're locked in, then you can start going to fill out the depth, the holes, whatever holes you have on down your depth chart. That's where you can turn to that, Mick. And so I don't think there's any rush for this coaching staff. I don't think the types of players that they're going to be targeting, it might not be flashy. It's not going to be what some fans want, but the types of guys they're going to be targeting won't be guys who sign in the 10-day window or that you will have to go ahead and scoop up in the 10-day window. It can be guys that you can slow play, get them on campus, make sure they're a fit culturally, doing all that, make sure the NIL dollars are going to be limited, not going to spend a ton, make sure that's right. So I wouldn't be concerned at all when it comes to the transfer portal. I think they have a plan, and I think they're executing that plan to perfection. And we know that this coaching staff deserves our trust as far as how they've been attacking things so far in the first, when it comes to roster building, these first, year, just over a year.
Awesome, man. Well, great show today, guys. Again, brought to you by Pearl River Resort. Dancing Rabbit Golf Course is the Augusta that you can play. You don't have to have a membership, but you can go out there. The Azaleas, the Oaks are two really awesome golf courses. If you like steaks, Philip M. Steakhouse is just fantastic. I'm planning on getting there sometime in May, but you can go there anytime. The weather's perfect for it right now. Then when you're done golfing, go inside to Silver Star or Golden Moon Casino and play the slots, best slot game around, man. I mean, you're talking about just amazing slots over there. They've invested in them. They have all the new stuff and a lot of them. So you'll find one you want. And then the sports book over at the Timeout Sports Lounge. So, all the stuff you need right there in Pearl River and Philadelphia, Mississippi. Hour and a half from Tuscaloosa, 2 hours and change from Birmingham. So swing over and check it out. All right, Clint, another great show, man. Roll Tide, brother.
To Pearl River Resort.